Hello, and welcome to Conversations for a Way Forward from Count Me In to Win and the Talk on Main Street. Your host is Annabel Park, and today's guest is activist Jobari Parker-Namdar.
So I think we're actually live right now. We are on Talk on Main Street, very progressive community. And I am talking today with Jobari Parker-Namdar. How do you pronounce your last name? Namdar?
Namdar.
Namdar, okay.
It's not too fancy.
And you are the son of a friend of mine, and so I heard about you from my friend Pam, your mom.
Yep.
And I we started talking tonight about what's been going on, and I just realized I really wanted to share this conversation with the Talk on Main Street community. So here we are, we're live, and we're just gonna start talking about what I'm calling conversation about a way forward.
Yeah.
And these are conversations that I encourage everyone to have with their friends. This is the time to do it, right? We got to figure out another way because it's not working. What we're doing isn't working. So I'm hoping that everyone gets into a huddle and start talking about, a way forward. So we're all ears. Like, we want to hear you. We want your ideas. We want your opinion. We want your stories. Just we're here to listen. So yeah, I'm gonna let you just take over.
All right. So my name is Jobari Parker-Namdar. I don't know if I'm an activist. I try to be active. I came up in the anti-war community and peace and justice, equal rights. So I've been exposed to like trans issues since I was 3 decades ago. And I've always tried to be outspoken and helpful. And I think I've gotten pretty good at having difficult conversations with people.
So tell me about that. I mean, what is the conversation you want to have right now with fellow Americans?
Might seem silly, but I think it's just a conversation about having more conversations. Like, I know right now, everyone's so polarized. Everyone's trying to convince someone of something, and like I was telling you earlier, I think the natural impulse is to start explaining why you see the way things you see them. Why you see the truth as the truth. And we start building this bridge to reconciliation from the side that we're on. I've seen Trump's tweets, I've seen injustice, I've seen all these things, and you should think what I think because it makes sense, and this is why it makes sense. But not often enough do we start building that bridge from the other side, being like, I understand why you might be driven to vote for Donald Trump or make any other number of decisions. I understand why you might be racist because of where you're coming from, because you've experienced hardship, because you've been hungry, and it's comforting for someone to come and tell you that this person is responsible for that. Now, and I feel like we need to start meeting people where they are, saying that you are where you are. If you hold on to, nasty and bigoted ideas after some exposure, then, we have an issue. But I think we cut off the conversation before we've even begun to process where someone else is coming from.
We don't even start the conversation, really. I mean, I know so many progressives who were telling me they don't want to have this conversation with people who might have voted for Trump or may still support Trump. And I understand it. It is really hard because I feel they're living in another reality. But I don't know how else we're going to create change unless we're able to have an inclusive conversation. So when you tell me this, as how old are you again, Jabari?
34.
Okay, you're 34-year-old biracial man. Like, you're telling me this, that you feel like you can have this conversation, especially in a week with such intense emotion and for me, anxiety. I don't know if you're feeling anxiety. It just makes me feel hopeful. I mean, honestly, that you're like, okay, let's have this conversation.
I tell everyone, I say it like it's easy. I'm well aware it is not easy. It's not an easy thing to do. Because when you go in, I mean, you're going into battle. It's mental battle, you know, and you have to be prepared. And if you want to bring someone along, you have to be prepared to like take a lot of heat. You're going to be taking the brunt of like that resistance, you know, so you always have to do the work and make sure your mental health is good. You need to like, I can't have too many conversations about race in a row. I think my threshold is higher than most, but you know, after I've talked to like 8 or 9 bigots, I'm like, okay, I need a week off, you know, like it is draining. But like, even in times like this, I see things that should be bringing us together. Like if you just, I just compel people to look at the humanity in what you're seeing. Like that young woman in Minneapolis, I think it was, that was tased by the police. It was like screaming, like, I'm getting out, I'm trying to, like, forget about, you know, her race, forget about how much money she has in her bank account, forget about everything. Like, take a minute to look at the humanity of this woman and see how she's being treated. And I don't care who you are, if you really take a step back, those images are chilling, you know, like, or seeing reporters being fired on, you know, whether you think they're fake news or not. Like, these are, like, if you take a step back and remove all these biases as you can, like, and just look at what's going on, it's chilling. And it's something that we, like, regardless of who you voted for, like, I feel like that's a point to start a conversation. It's like, look at that. It's like, maybe you could justify having your knee on this man's neck for 30 seconds, but 7 minutes, you know, and that's
more. It was more.
Yeah. Like it's absurd, but like that's the, I don't even want to call it a silver lining, but that's the thing out of this, that egregious act, that it just shows you, it's such a snapshot of humanity. And again, it's like we should, like, I'm not defending the officer at all, but like, he is a human and we have to reconcile that as human beings, you know, like he's not a monster. I mean, he is a monster figuratively, but I mean, like, he was born of this world as a human being like the rest of us. And he made the decisions that walked him down the road of his life, that led him to devalue this man, you know? And if we want to reconcile how that could happen, the first thing we need to do is see that this is a human being. And we are living in a place where we can cultivate a man capable of doing something like that to another man.
So, I mean, taking a step back, I mean, what is the thing that you want people to think about when we think about this murder? Like, what is it that maybe some of us are not seeing that you would like people to see?
I want people to imagine there was no race. I want people to imagine we were all of one race. We were all like really like the human race. I want people to imagine they didn't see his color. They didn't see anything about him. I want people to imagine that was a friend of theirs, you know? And I want people to start looking at situations through that lens. So we really start like peeling back, and it's hard. I know it's hard. I say it like it's so easy. I know it's hard because we've lived our lives being bombarded by these images. And I think also, as a side note, like, we as humans like figuring things out, like knowing what's what, knowing if I see your skin color, that tells me something about you. Now I'm building this box where I understand what you are, you know?
Sorry, I'm getting more light.
No. And the idea that like we don't, you know, and that you have to look at people on an individual basis, you really want to understand what they're going through is important. But like that's what I want people to start seeing. I just want people to start seeing and acknowledging each other's humanity. And like, I've been saying this a lot too. I as a 34-year-old Black and Middle Eastern man living in Harlem, working in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, I have more in common with someone with a white working class person living in a trailer park in Memphis, you know, like, because we have so many shared experiences. You know, we know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. We know what it's like to fall in love. We know what it's like to be hungry. We know what it's like to, you know, be lost. You know, we know what it's like to not feel secure. We know what it's like to feel hopeless. We know what it's like to feel a sliver of hope, you know, but we don't talk about that commonality. Like I have more in common with them than I do with Joe Biden or Donald Trump, you know, or most of our representatives, honestly. But like, I really want us to start seeing and looking at each other's humanity and seeing and starting from the point of common ground.
So you're saying you feel a connection with them because you understand economic struggle, and people like Trump and Biden and many others like are in a completely different bubble, and they don't really understand this economic struggle. Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah.
That's definitely part of it. There's something to, if you're incredibly wealthy, if you've never not had a bunch of chocolate ice cream in your freezer, you know, there's just a slice of life that you just don't really understand. But it's more than that. Like this is also why I think people should travel, because like we say like, oh, American, like we don't have a culture. Like there's not an American culture. Like there is an American culture. It's not just white culture. It's not just black culture. There is a cohesive American culture. It's football, it's hot dogs, it's protesting, it's police brutality, it's all of that stuff, but it is ours and it is our shared experience. Like if I took, you know, someone from Oklahoma and we went to Portugal together, we'd probably both be like, wow, this is weird. Like, remember hot dogs? You know, there's just all this commonality that we just share, but we don't focus on that enough. The economic part is just one sliver of all of this commonality that I see.
Yeah. I want to ask you something. I've traveled actually a lot in the South after the 2012 election, trying to talk to white male conservatives. I mean, women too, but mostly the white male conservatives, partly because they're the ones that I felt most alienated from in this country. And it was getting so bad that I was thinking about just leaving the country or just like giving up in America, just getting really discouraged. And but I just said I want to like take the time to have conversations with them. And it was really interesting because I felt like part of what was happening was like people were miseducated about our history, about American history. A lot of people in the South, in particular, learned what I consider to be revisionist history about the Civil War, about slavery and Jim Crow, Reconstruction, and all that. And that the right-wing media really exploits that revisionist history and just keeps pressing the buttons of resentment and anger and alienation, you know, to the point where people just feel like they have to cling to this tribal identity that is being thrust upon them, right? White Christian and white supremacist, because they feel so afraid of what's happening to America and feeling like somehow they're being presented as the enemy of progress, right? The white conservatives are the villains of the American story that progressives tell. Right. You know, and so then it makes them feel like just this hatred. Like, why am I the enemy? Why am I the villain? You know, when I work hard, I go to church, I care for my neighbors. Like, why am I the enemy? And so I feel like there's a lot of room for conversation to help, because once you start to get to know people and have these sort of conversations where you see them as a person and not like an instance of that group, right? But just like, this is Joe and he does this and he likes this kind of music. I mean, then you get past some of that and you can really start to develop relationships. And in just the same way that group therapy works, right? I don't know if you've done group therapy, but just the same way group therapy works, once you're in a relationship with somebody, then there's a lot of room to like give them feedback or basically start making these adjustments, because right now they're like locked into a certain worldview, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like an addiction. But to basically start to work on it by giving feedback gradually, I mean, I have found that to be actually really effective myself. Like I have personal experience seeing people change, but the problem is it takes time. You know, it could take years before you start hearing them say something different.
I know. And it's like we're at this point where it's like time is not on our side. We need changes now.
Yeah.
But it's like I feel like it is what it is. Like we have to start now. Like I wish we'd started sooner, but you know, we just have to start that process. You know, and like I think you're right. I want to shout out Daryl Davis. He is he was a mentor in a program that I was in Maryland at Strathmore, and he's a boogie woogie piano player, and he basically single-handedly shut down the Ku Klux Klan in Maryland in the early 2000s. And all he did was sit with people and meet with them, you know, and say, hey, you are racist. I mean, he didn't say it that bluntly, but he was like, you know, he was sitting down with people who he had the understanding were racist. And he didn't say, you know, you're less than me, you're an idiot, you're this, you're that. He said, you hate me. You've never met me. All you know about me is that I'm Black, and you hate me because of that. Explain. And he's gathered more robes from renounced Klansmen than anyone else in the country, I think. And throughout all of that, he was called an Uncle Tom. He was called that. He was called, you know, Bush supporter, like all these things, just for having the conversation. And like, that's proof. That's proof within our lifetimes that what you're saying is true. You know, that we because you're right. Like people, at the end of the day, people just want to feel safe. They want to feel secure. They want to look up for their family, you know, for their people.
Yeah,
you know?
they want to feel, I think, included and respected and heard.
Yeah, heard
everywhere.
Is big.
Yes, exactly. Everywhere I went, like around the country, whether they're progressive or conservative or moderate, everyone said they wanted conversations. They wanted to be heard.
Yeah.
Everyone. That right now, that's the go ahead.
Wanting conversations and wanting to be heard are two very different things, you know, because I feel like lots of people want to be heard, don't want to have conversations. They want you to hear them, you know?
Right.
And even though like conservative and liberal ideologies are inherently different, so I'm not drawing any equal signs there at all. But the idea of like, I mean, we demonize each other. Like there's rhetoric on Fox News about liberals and this or that, and they're vilified and demonized. And there's rhetoric on MSNBC and CNN, and some of it justified, some of it not, but like vilifying, you know, poor and working class people, you know, and people that just people that don't feel heard. And if you feel like, and here again is like some commonality. Again, not equating the struggles, but like you're of a community. I'm just going to talk about a community. You tell me who this could apply to. You're of a community that does not have a voice, and you turn on the TV and people are demonizing you, that community. You can't even defend yourself. You can't speak up for yourself. And that's what you see. Like that does not feel good. Whether, you know, your you know, oppression is whether you're living through a 50 on the oppression scale or a 75 on the oppression scale or a 25 on the oppression scale, it does not feel good to be of a community that you feel is not heard. And the only time that's talked about is negative, you know? Right. You're going to cling to whatever. If someone rides in and says, I hear you, I see you, you know, these are the bad people, come follow me. I can't really fault someone for following that person, you know, because I know what it's like to be desperate like that.
So you're describing why people voted for Trump in 2016, right? Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. But here's the thing: is that I feel like, you know, what we're really up against is a lot of brainwashing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
people have been told this story about who's to blame in this country,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who are the villains in this country? And the right wing, that, you know, a lot of people have been convinced that the blame falls on the immigrants,
Yeah.
or Black people, or liberals, or whatever. I mean, and they're so kind of fixed on this view, a very kind of, you know, I think just completely
Binary choice thing.
well, false. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's, yeah. Anyway, so so it's very hard to figure out how to start asking people to rethink that, like how to kind of basically like
I would
change
say
like
this.
their worldview, because it needs to be done like that. Adjustments have to get made, but it can only be done if we engage them. Like they're not going to suddenly like see the light.
Yeah.
We have to engage them, even though it's painful, like extremely painful. Yeah.
But I think the next step in making people see those things is, again, going back to pointing out each other's humanity. And secondly, and very importantly, having people to start look at who's doing well right now, who's successful right now. If I'm not doing well, and they're telling me, okay, this guy in Oklahoma is the reason I'm not doing well, and I look at him and I say, oh, that's interesting. He is not doing well. If he's the reason I'm not doing well, shouldn't he be doing better than me? And then I start thinking, okay, so who's actually prospering? Who's actually doing well? And then we start seeing, okay, Amazon's doing pretty good right now. Okay, like Booz Allen's doing pretty good. You know, Northrop Grumman's doing pretty good. You know, like military industrial product, like the complex, they're doing all right. And I'm not an advocate of like, you know, like we don't need to. There are steps that need to be taken, but we don't need to like completely take all of Jeff Bezos's money, you know. But we can leave him with enough money for him and his children for the end of time to be fine. And just share an equitable slice of what he's making to make our collective community better. And I think that's a compelling argument. And even for those doing well, you know, the thing that COVID has shown us is like, you know, you might live in a fine house or a nice apartment. You might not think that the homeless crisis has anything to do with you. But if you live in a place where there are homeless people, that affects you. Like, even if you have no like compassion, even if you have zero compassion for these people, on a personal level, like your community is still affected by them not doing well. We all do well when we all do well, you know, like you can't if you get sick and there are less homeless people, then there are more doctors to treat you. There are more people to take care of you when you need things to be done, you know? But like, I guess that's what I would say we need to start pointing people in the direction of figuring out. Like when I was in my 20s, this thing would happen where people would give me advice. I wouldn't listen to it. Exactly what they said would happen happened. And then I would go back and be like, oh man, I totally should have listened to you, right? That happened to me several times. But at a certain point, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start listening to these people ahead of time. I'm going to save myself a lot of trouble. Just listen to them ahead of time. That's where I've gotten to at this point in my life. And not everyone's like that. So like people like me then, and I think a lot of people want to figure stuff out for themselves. So they need to be nudged. And I think that's the way we need to start nudging people. It's like, how is he taking from me if you don't have nothing? You know, like it just doesn't make sense. And once you start pointing that out to people, and once you see it, you can't unsee it, you know? And the reason there's all this like, you know, divisiveness and is because I think there are people, and it's a small group of us as a whole, there's a small group of humanity has a vested interest in us being separate and us not seeing eye to eye. And I think, you know, the reality is, if we all chip in, even those at the top, we'll all be okay. But like, even those that have never wanted for anything in their lives still operate like you and me doing a little better is going to destroy their world. And like, I just don't believe that to be true.
So, I mean, I'm just wondering though, like right now, what we see is just people being brutalized. You know, we just all witnessed, the world witnessed a man being murdered. And every day we're seeing images of people being brutalized, right?
Yeah.
By the police, by people who are supposed to protect us. So I just want to know how you're processing that. Like, do you get angry? Are you afraid? I mean, what do you feel called upon to do in this moment about that?
Yeah. I feel afraid. I don't know if I feel any more afraid of the police, maybe a little bit more. I don't know if I feel a whole lot more afraid of the police than I have before. I think now the main difference in police brutality is the amount of cameras we have. You know, like how many times have we been told someone was resisting arrest and that's why they're dead now? And there were no this was before body cams, this was before everyone had a cell phone. You know, like that's, so I think more so than this time being scarier for me, I think chilling is a more appropriate word. Because I think even about that, the CNN reporter who was arrested live on air and his whole crew, and he was just like, you know, we'll back up, you know, and then he's like, excuse me, and like, you're under arrest. And he's like, for what? And they just, everything is so calm. That's the part that really unnerved me about that video. They're just like, okay, I'm being arrested now. It was like, it's like everyone was having this out-of-body experience, like just thinking about watching that video. And I'm like, this is the world we are accepting, where this thing is just like, it doesn't even matter that it's on film. You know, like, like before, okay, it was hidden. We all kind of knew, because that person that they're talking about, they didn't seem like they were the kind of person that would have put up a fight or done what they said they did, but like, we didn't know. So that was sort of a shield. But now it's like they don't even need a shield to do whatever they want to anybody. And to the people, like, and everyone's so mad, and they should be, and Black and brown people are affected disproportionately. But the reality is they do this to everybody. I mean, they blinded a white woman who was a reporter. She's permanently blind in one eye now. They shot her in the eye with a rubber bullet. Like, they'll just do whatever. And that's the thing that's really, like, I think starting to sink in. I think we're sort of nudging people into seeing, like, my community is disproportionately affected, but this affects every one of us. You know,
I mean, what I saw with that CNN reporter being arrested and all the incidents you just mentioned is that it's like a state of war. You know, like if you're in a state of war, what is normal changes. And so for them, for the police, like they and I guess the state, you know, the National Guard now, that's a state of war. And so different rules of engagement are allowed. And I think that, so right now I'm just feeling like I don't know where this is going. I don't know how far it's going to go, how many people are going to have to die, how it's going to affect COVID, if we're going to have a resurgence. I mean, it's just, everything is so uncertain, unpredictable. But I do know one thing. A lot of this is being done in the context of an election. So all the decisions that Trump is making right now, for instance, is done in the context of an election, right? All this talk about law and order. It's like, okay, he's like sounding like Nixon in 1968. Like that's what he's doing, you know, using that playbook. And you know, Joe Biden going out to talk to protesters. I mean, I'm glad he did, but it's like, it's in the context of an election. And so there are two things happening at once. It's an election, and there's a kind of low-level civil war going on. right? And I don't even know if it's low level anymore. But and so like I think we have to figure out like how to set the standard for what is normal and what is acceptable and not acceptable. Like the people, we have to figure out how to speak up and how to hold people accountable, how to raise a fuss and all that stuff, and do it without people dying.
Yeah.
No, without another Kent State or whatever. I mean,
Mhm.
you know, it is a very scary situation. Um,
I think the biggest obstacle is our pull to tribalism.
mhm,
It's like I think we need to start when we talk about having these conversations. Everyone needs a seat at the table. We're all under this umbrella of humanity. You know, you talk about a civil war, like we're engaged in war. We didn't talk. The police were gearing up for war. The citizens were not. None of them were. Most of the citizens were gearing up to peacefully protest, and some of the citizens, a small amount, were gearing up to steal. Stealing and war are not the same thing. Like no citizens were preparing for war, but our
mhm,
police were. You know, that's a problem. And like we need to start talking to each other. Like we're all humans. A police officer, I know you want to go home. I know you want to be safe. So do we. But like your job is to protect me. You know,
mhm.
if I believed that, if I believed that's what you were on the street to do, we wouldn't have any problem. The
Right.
problem is that people do not believe that that is what the police are out there to do. And when they march in, supposedly our protectors, geared up for war, it just reinforces that. You know, when you tase people that are listening to you, it reinforces that idea that you're not here to protect me. You're scary. You're the boogeyman, you know?
Right. Right. I mean, I wonder what would happen, Jabari, if we just started asking people to talk to us. Let's like talk to the police. Will you sit
Mm-hmm.
down and talk to us? Right?
Yeah.
Just start just saying, we just want to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And so that like we can at least start to humanize them and maybe have them see us as human beings as well. But like let's see what if we just made the gesture to
Yeah.
just start like initiating conversations with people that
Mm-hmm.
you don't normally talk to, like the police,
Yeah.
right?
I
Right.
mean, I think it's important.
Um,
I, my, I have 31st cousins. One of them is a
mm,
police officer. He's like a brother to me. I love him. You know, I all I want to do now is sit down and talk to him and be like, what? Just tell me what's going on. You know, like peel back the veneer. Like, what do you guys talk about? What do you guys think when you march in? Like, let's build some trust. I want you to know that I'm not going to throw a brick at you, and I want
mhm,
to know that you're not going to shoot me. Like, can we get
right.
to that point? Like that's
Mhm,
what I want. Like we
mhm,
both want to go home and be safe,
mhm,
you know, but like again, we focus on like the differences. These are people sowing unrest. These are people out here to brutalize the people they're supposed to protect. No,
right.
these are two people that have families and want to go home and kiss and hug them. How do
Mhm,
we make that happen? You know?
mhm. I mean, I also have a more specific idea. I haven't really tried this, but I've been thinking about it. I feel like part of what can actually bring us together is learning about history together. Because one of the reasons why we are in separate realities or separate bubbles is that we learn different histories,
Yeah.
right? And once we start to like look at the histories that we've been taught and like, you know, talk to people who have
Mm-hmm.
done research on it, who can share knowledge with us, then I feel like it's something that we can like really can actually bring us together, you know. But
Listen,
like I
I
think
don't
there's
want the government coming in changing my textbooks. I think that's the like the
yeah,
biggest obstacle to like adopting a nationwide curriculum. I think that's a great
yeah.
idea.
Well,
But
you
you
know,
know,
it does. I don't necessarily mean that we start with a nationwide curriculum. It's more like, what if we just started creating a lot of content,
yeah.
you know, social media content about history,
I
and
mean,
then just started like circulating it,
I'm on
and just
board. I think that all is in the bubble of like more conversation. Let's talk about it. Let's meet each
Yeah.
other where we are, not where we want people to be. You know, like no one's perfect, but I think I agree. I think it's a great idea.
For instance, I feel like we need to talk about what happened in 1968. Because there's so many parallels between what's happening right now and what happened in 1968, right? And so I think that's one place we could start. It's like, okay, let's talk about what happened then and what maybe we could learn from it that we don't want to repeat, right? Because I think people on all sides would say, I don't want to repeat 1968. But in any case, well, this has been like, I just feel so much better after talking to you, because today has been so tense, so awful, so discouraging. I'm in DC, where is it? You know, we have a curfew right now that started at 7
p.m. till Sunday.
Yeah, and so it's like it's a weird feeling to have a curfew.
Yeah.
That's another thing where we shouldn't accept as normal. It's like that's like a wartime thing. Like you have curfews when there's like a war going on. And anyway, so let's keep talking. I want to invite you to initiate conversation, and you know, if you like, you can use this platform, you know, to reach more people. And let's start having these conversations. Let's talk to your cousin who's a police officer. And I try to find people who would talk to us about 1968 or whatever. And let's just see what happens. Let's just start getting people talking.
Yeah.
I mean, what do we have to lose? What do we have to lose?
Literally nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
I really believe that's the answer, because I see. I mean, we're just so similar. We are so more similar than people even realize. But like I see it everywhere. I think I owe it to not having a community of like mixed people to like fall in with. You know, I've always seen people as people, you know, across race, gender, sexual orientation, any division you can draw. Like I've always seen people. I've seen so much commonality. And I think more conversation, like an exhausting, staggering, and like undaunting amount of conversation is what we need. But I strongly believe that that's the answer.
Oh, well, this is fantastic. Well, thank you so much. We're going to have many, many more conversations. And
I'm here. And I have to be in the house after 8, so you know I got plenty of free time.
Yeah, so let's just start asking people to have conversations with us, and just let me know whenever you want to do a conversation with somebody. Sure. And we can use this platform. We can go live. You can record it, whatever it takes. But let's just start doing it. I mean, I feel great about this. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
thank you for like making my day. I'm so happy, and let me know how your cookies turned out. And
they are excellent.
Okay, and let's talk again really soon. Okay.
For sure.
I appreciate this so much. Okay.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Okay. Bye, everybody. We're going to be having lots of these conversations, so let me know if you want to be involved. Okay. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Conversations for a Way Forward from Count Me In to Win and the Talk on Main Street. To learn more, find us on Facebook at Talk on Main Street.